Hello and welcome to Cards and Coaching. This will be the fourth and for the moment being last video I am going to make about constellations with tarot. And as I explained in the other videos, I would like to bring up an example. So I want to go through the whole idea step by step, what might be important to understand how this is being set up. So it always depends. If I'm making a spread and I'm using the spread I explained in the last video to use it immediately as a constellation, that is one possibility. The other one is that a person comes to my place and has a certain subject, a certain problem, and we are going to step through the problem to end up with parts of personality which will be used in a constellation later on. So I set it up as a spreadsheet and try to go through the whole steps in a way to explain it on an example that I went through with a client, with a customer, and to explain a little bit how it develops. Because in the beginning, if a person comes to my place, I don't have in mind immediately to end up with a constellation. It depends on what the problem is. It depends on the client. It depends on her ideas and the tools she seems to have inside of her, so we can work with it. So this one worked out quite well with the idea of a constellation. So we'll try to show it, what it meant concerning the cards, concerning the discussion that we had, and how the whole thing ended up at the end. And on the end of the video, I will also bring up another idea why it might be interesting to have more than one deck. So because sometimes you can reframe a thought or an image that a person has in mind with using a different deck, so using the same card out of a different deck, but that will be completely at the end. So let me try and start to explain the situation as it was. So let me try this. This is the first time I'm doing it like this with a different screen, so bear up with me. So I'm going to try and explain the different steps concerning constellation, or more like the different steps of a session that ends up in a constellation. So first of all, let me talk about the customer, the client, and what happened, why she came to my place. So first of all, there is a conversation about the situation, about the problem, and I'm using a score for it. It's an NLP tool. I admit I had problems with it in the beginning, but now I like it quite much. And it's based on symptom. So the client is explaining what is going on the cause, which means what underlies that symptom, the outcome, what does the client sorry for that English, what does the client wish as a result, the resources, so what is inside of the person, what knowledge and what resources does the person have, and the long-time effects. It is quite rarely that I'm using them step by step like this. It is in the conversation that I get information for the different points of it. I'm going through different questions that help me to find out what is really lying underneath the problem. So this client came to me because actually she has a problem with a colleague at work, and she had the feeling that whenever she came into their office, the boss was working in the same office, in the same room, and that in a certain way she seemed to draw the attention of the boss, and that she was only trying to have his attention, and that it wasn't about work anymore. So I asked her about how she felt about it, and the moment I came to the question if she knew that feeling from another situation, she came up that actually that was exactly how she felt about her father. Because in her childhood, she tried to have the attention of her father, and the father simply turned his back on her. And the goal in the whole situation was to find closure with that inside situation, so not to project it onto actually a fatherly figure that she considered her, her boss to be. So she projected this father image onto her boss, and the moment she came up with that situation, that the attention was actually not being drawn towards this other colleague, but away from her, reminded her of what was going on in her life with her father. So she wanted to find closure with the whole situation, with her father, to get a better contact and a better way to handle the situation she was working in. So while we were working on this, it was important to find out what was going on inside of her. And we worked out different parts of personalities. They were quite based on the inner archetypes of the adaptive child and the rebel child, more the child part because it had a lot to do with feelings than the grown-up or the parental parts. And so we had three parts coming up. First of all, the adaptive child that simply wanted to be accepted. First of all, now we were in the situation of the father, accepted by her father, because the father had an idea, and she had a sentence she came up with. Her father wanted her to be like a nice grown-up girl. So actually, that was an oxymoron. You cannot be the little girl and be the grown-up in the same moment. While inside of her was that part that wanted to have fun and to play, because each time she was trying to have fun, she had a bad conscience that she didn't have the right to do that, and that there were negative consequences coming up with it. And on the other hand, she had very clear ideas, and she explained it and expressed it very clearly. That she said, yes, now that I take a look at all those situations in my past, it is clear for me that I want a clean cut. And at that moment, I asked her if she was okay with constellation. And as I know that she liked tarot, I offered her the idea of the tarot, and we used the Wheel of the Year tarot for it. Well, I have shown her different decks, and she has chosen that one. And she had the possibility now to choose the cards openly or to just pick them without seeing them. And I know if you're going to see the cards that maybe a person who is a bit critical about it and a bit skeptical about it cannot believe what card she picked without seeing them. So this was the adaptive child. It's the Eight of Cups actually. And when she took a look at the card, the first reaction was, yes, that's exactly how I experienced my father. The way he turned his back on me, and actually in some part of her life, he really left when she wasn't even grown up. But the next thing she saw on that card was that this woman wasn't a child anymore. And she came up with the idea, with a quite adult idea. It was as if the adult kicked in when she explained the card, that, well, even if her childhood would have been a great one and a good one, with the father caring for her, now at her age that she had right now, he wouldn't be there anyway. Not because he left her, but because as a grown-up you don't have your parents next to you at every step you do. So that it was maybe the moment to, well, say goodbye to him in a certain way, to clear the whole thing and to just bring up what she needed out of a situation, but that she could not be mad at him right at the moment she was living in right now. As a child, it was one thing. She was disappointed. She may have even been afraid. But as a grown-up, well, as a grown-up, you don't have your parents next to you all the moments. And already while explaining the card and taking a look at that card in a very adult way, she came up with her own ideas about the situation as it was now versus the situation it was when she was a child. The card she drew as for the rebel child were two kids playing, just having fun. And when I was asking her to get an idea on the card, how she sees the card, the first thing she said was, "There's nobody to judge them. They have fun. That's it, period." It's as if they were both inviting me. The little girl waving maybe with the disc and saying, "Hey, come on, join us playing." And there is nobody who is judging us while we are playing. And she said, "Yes, there is no father figure around that is judging me." And so I asked her for this third card, the adult one. And she came up with a death card. And while death card is normally shocking people, her first reaction was, "I said I want a clean cut. I cannot get a better card for a clean cut than that one. That's it." And there is a mourning part. Yes, I need to heal from all this. I need to mourn the loss of a father figure, not of the father in a physical way, but in a father figure that has not been there for me. And I need, like the one when she's cutting with the scythe and she's just taking what is needed, I need to find out where the cut is, where the line is, where I draw the line of what I'm taking out of my childhood and what I just let go and let die in a certain way, so that I can go on living with it. So after this, I asked her to put the cards in an upway situation, in an upway position, and how she would put the cards. So she came up with this. And in the beginning, the two child cards, so the adaptive one and the rebel child, although she left them exactly like that, she did not change the situation during the work. So she kept it like this. I asked her if she wanted to change something, but she didn't. And in the beginning, it was for her that it was the adaptive child versus the rebel child. That was what she was focusing on. And she put in the beginning, in an intuitive way, the adult child, the adult person out of the situation. And so we were talking just about the children part inside of her in the beginning. So it was about this inviting the adaptive child into the game, into the playing of the rebel child, and what the, the adaptive child might need to be capable of playing. And it always came up with this idea of not having the afterthought of, when I have fun now, then something bad is going to happen to me. And I asked her if there is a part that may help her letting go of that idea. And again, for example, at this moment, I asked her, is that part of personality, is that part already in the constellation? Do you want to draw another card for it? And she said, no, it's there. And then she started to focus on the adult card and becoming aware that it was the adult card that was necessary actually to clean up the mess, so that the adaptive child could become that playful child and the one who has fun without having this afterthought of what happened to her during her childhood, where actually the situation was that the moment she had she did something and she wanted a reaction from a reaction from her father, the reaction was always negative, and she ended up to say, well, at least I have a reaction of my father. It's better I have a negative reaction than no reaction at all. And it became clear to her. So we worked out what she needed to find closure. And in the questions and the answers, she said, I need to find time for me to make that cut. I need to find time to mourn that situation. and I need to find time to have fun. So it was about taking time for herself at that moment. At the end of the session, I made pictures, I made photographs, the ones you have seen, and I sent them to her so that she could look at them each time again when she came in a situation or when she took the time, as she said, to find closure and when she took the time to have fun. What I like best in the whole situation is actually the feedback I get later on. If people have such not a reading, but all this work they are doing, because they are working at that moment, their mind is focused on this, they need to reframe their ideas. So it's not something simple in a certain way. It can be fun for people who found out that actually this is working, but some get out of my rooms and are really tired, and it is for me normal that they are not going to be overwhelming thankful that now they have something in their hands. But as they start working with it, and as all this starts working inside of them, they come up with the experience that they make, and they give me a feedback later on. That is normally the most amazing one. The one I got from this person was that when she went back to work and this other secretary came in, the moment she got that feeling that said, oh, now that person is going to draw the attention again to herself, she saw the picture of this adult ego state, the death card with the scythe, and she actually started laughing. And she got a certain distance to the situation and found out that actually this other colleague was just doing her job. She was just asking him something about a letter she received, how she should answer the letter, or something about a project going on, and that it wasn't to draw the attention away from her, but while she was working and he was bringing the attention not to her personally, but to the situation, to the letter. He read the letter and gave her information how to answer, for example. And so she got a certain distance to the situation. She didn't take the situation personally. She didn't believe that the colleague was doing this out of a personal reason. And so she found her peace with the situation, and it was even easier for her to work on the closure concerning the situation with her father. Last thing I was talking about just in the beginning, in just a moment, I have a visitor again, was what happens if you have, for example, a card and the person is not getting out of the problem of the card. How can it help if you have different decks to maybe bring up another deck to reframe the card? That is the point where I think that it is good that the cards have a certain naming, not explanation, not a description of the card, but for example, if it is Two of Swords or whatever, it may help. So I had a situation with a person who ended up also not choosing the card but picking it without seeing it. And concerning a situation, she came up with the Page of Wands, and we were using Ciro Marchetti's Legacy of the Divine, one of my favorite decks. And the card she came up with was the Page of Wands. And the first reaction this client had concerning the card was the way the person was dressed. Like dressed for a certain role that the person had to play in the life, in the future life. And it was something about that feeling that she had also concerning the steps she had to do. Could she do them in a free way, or was she going to be set up into a certain frame that she had to play a role instead of living out her capacities? And there is one deck that I nearly know completely by heart. It's the Druid craft, and I knew exactly what the card looked like in that one. So there it is not called Page of Wands, but Princess of Wands. And already the client was a woman, so it made it easier. And I have shown her it's still the same card. She's into tarot, so she knew exactly what I was talking about. So you can also take a look at the Page of Wands of that position in your life like this. So you have the choice. Do you want to get up with the idea that you have to live a set up frame, or is it something where you do the first step with the wind, because you see the way the cloth goes backwards and the hair goes backwards, that there is wind in the hair, and you move freely as the one that you are, with a certain support with the wand, with the staff, but without being locked in, and especially because actually the color, which had a lot to do with communication and was in a certain way, has a certain, for some people, this card might have a certain blocking feeling in the communication, which was definitely not to be seen here. So instead of keeping her on this Page of Wands, knowing that she knew the tarot and the explanation of the cards in itself, bringing up a different image, helped her getting a different point of view of the situation that she was in, or that she would make the first step into. Not being the child to be lectured and to become exactly how the grown ups imagined it, but having a possibility to freely make the own experiences in a certain way. So this may be a good way to understand that, as I'm always saying, 3 to 5 decks at least. You don't need to have hundreds of decks as I have, but if you start working with tarot cards as a coach, please consider to have more than one deck. And I know that a lot of people say, yes, it's the Rider-Waite and you have to work with the Rider-Waite. Please consider the idea to have completely different decks, so you have the opportunity to reframe, as I have just shown you in this example. So as again, thanks for watching me, and I hope to see you soon again.